No.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Hi there.
Hi, you all right?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well,
so we've got recording in progress.
okay. Vigil at the weekend. We had a very moving vigil at the weekend with David as well. I don't know if you've seen the photographs, or I put some on Facebook today. But we had some students here. Do you want to come say hello before we start?
Hi.
Hello. Now, this is one of my students. Now, we're going to leave it a few minutes because we are obviously I've invited all the master's students, and I've invited and in fact, it's gone out to all the law graduates as well, and some of my colleagues. So I really apologise if not a huge amount of people come, Mohamedou. I know there's lots of exams going on and things like that.
I don't care.
I know you don't care. I know you don't
I'm
care.
not the U.S. Army Recruitment Center.
When I said to Andy, I said, "Oh my God, there might not be people there," and he went, "Oh my God, that's a shame. You need to get people there for Mohamedou." And I was like, "Oh my God."
No. He really doesn't know me.
No. Oh, good.
Like
okay.
you are enough.
Travel around here a bit. You're enough.
Just having you, Sarah, is enough. You know.
Oh, I'm so tired. Yeah. Well, we'll hopefully we will have other people joining us as well. You know, well, obviously, hopefully we'll have Andy joining us.
Yeah, I hope so. He's enough also. Sarah, I think we really need to do more in person. Like,
well, the thing is I want you to, if you are able to, I want you to come over again here, and we'll do the same as we did last time, because we can use a lecture theatre and we can repeat what we did with all of our law students for this year. Yeah.
Let's bring down the house.
And then also, you know those two students that you met at Tunbridge Wells. Do you remember the students at Tunbridge Wells?
Yes.
They came on the demonstration on Saturday.
Oh my God.
They came on the demonstration, and they've got permission from one of the schools to do the talk. So they'll definitely want you to come over, Mohamedou, in April. Yeah,
absolutely.
And they said if they have the budget, they want to invite the prison guard that was with you in. Yeah, they want. I think they want.
Steve.
They might have.
Absolutely.
They might have the funding to invite him, to pay for him to come over from America. So we're working on that. They're working on that for April.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very good idea, and I really enjoyed like the trip. And like last time, it was so much, and I was like a bit overwhelmed.
Yes, of course, of course, yeah, of course. Yeah. It was so much. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Great, we're all here. I did extend the invite to all of our undergraduates and some staff, but you know, there's not a huge amount of us here, but I'm very pleased that we're all very, very happy that you're here.
Right.
So I think what we'll do, hello, is that? I don't know who Sabah is. Do you want to show your face, Sabah? You don't have to. Oh God.
Andy,
you don't have to, Sabah. We'll give people about 5 minutes just to turn up, and then we'll start. Is that all right, everyone? Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Normally I do start. Well, we'll start in a minute. But Andy, it was a good demonstration on Saturday, wasn't it? Oh, he's gone.
He's gone. I tell you what, I'll fill in the time following up what Mohamedou said about Sarah. See, one time I was talking to Sarah about doing something. She's like, "Yeah, I want to do this. I want to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I mean, we could do that, but I mean, that's probably not going to happen." And she goes, a Coke and a pack of crisps. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'll bet you a Coke and a pack of crisps. And she's got this Coke and a pack of crisps thing, you know.
Well, you've never bought that. I said if I get 100 people to come to such and such, you've got to buy me a Coke and a packet of crisps.
100 people.
So that's how I work. I work in terms of a Coke and a packet of crisps. But no, we pulled it off on Saturday. I thought really well. It was sort of some great photographs. Did you see the photograph of Hugh holding the banner?
No, where are the photos, Sarah?
Well, I put them on my Facebook, but I'm sending them to Andy, and Andy's going to put them on.
You mean me?
No, so David's going to put them on the website.
Yeah, they're on the WhatsApp, and then I'll stick them on the UK
I've got this
Guantanamo
this
Network.
new thing, Andy and David, so you know, is I don't work at weekends anymore. So that's why you haven't all got the photographs. I'm trying to take more care of myself and not work all the time. Okay.
Okay.
So but you will get them tonight.
Andy,
Yes.
sorry for interjecting. Could you please do your lighting a little bit better? I want to see your pretty face. And
well, I wish I could get better lighting,
dark.
Mohamedou, but I haven't got that organized.
But you call Dot to get a light.
You need a media specialist. You need like a
I do. I need a
for
media
that.
advisor,
Okay.
and I haven't
You need,
got
like
one.
makeup people putting the makeup
Now
on.
then, hello, Courtney. Courtney was the president of the Law Society last year, who met with you, Mohamedou. Courtney, I think this is Courtney who says court on there, who organised.
Yes, I remember Courtney.
Courtney,
yes,
yeah.
I do remember that. Why don't people show their faces?
I don't know. Please show your face, Courtney and Sabah. It might be that they're not able to. But okay, so oh my Courtney,
I have a surprise for you guys.
Yeah.
I want to show the surprise, but I was waiting on you to be here. Hey, hi, Courtney.
Remember Courtney?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
A ball of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to show you something. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I am sitting in the room, the house of arguably the most known writer in the history of writing. Okay? And that is her.
Oh, Anne Frank. Oh my God.
Yes,
oh, wow.
that's Anna Frank. That's her place.
You're in Anne Frank's house.
I show her room, and I'm so scared to enter her room because it's so. But I just keep putting like flowers.
Oh, that's so cool. He's kind of really well known.
I keep bringing her flower.
Oh my goodness.
That's her room.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, amazing.
Oh my goodness.
And
So we're actually, so he's actually showing us Anne Frank's house because he's celebrated activist in the world. And, yeah.
Well, this is what I brought her yesterday.
Wow. Oh my God. So you're actually in her house in Amsterdam.
Yes, I am.
That's
I'm taking care
amazing.
of the house because they have a tradition. Like every writer takes care of the house for 1 year, and I was chosen to take care of the house this year.
So my goodness,
that is amazing.
Mohamedou, are you living in that house then?
Yes, I am.
Oh my goodness.
So now,
Mohamedou, I was actually there a few weeks ago. I was in Anne Frank's house a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
I know this is a preview, but the next thing is with money. I learned from Americans how to make money.
Okay, so listen, so David, since it's definitely recording, I'm here, sorry. I'm not going to speak much because I think we really want to be hearing more from Mohamedou and Andy and having questions from the students, but I'll just introduce everybody. So my name's Sarah Birch. I think everyone knows me apart from, I think there's someone here who might not have met me before. And I am a lecturer at the University of Brighton, and one of the things I teach is a module in international human rights and social justice. And we've got a very small, and I'm a tutor as well, so I've got a very small group of us that are doing the international human rights and social justice module this year. And this is our last seminar this year, and they've been amazing students. They've done amazing work. One of the things I wanted to make sure that they were aware of was during this time that I've taught them was the gross injustice which is going on in Guantanamo. And we talked about it last week. I showed them some clips actually from the conference, particularly looking at activism and accountability that Courtney and others were involved in as well, the big conference we had in November of the year before last. And I've asked them all to watch the film, The Mauritanian, and to come with any questions that they may have for you. for yourself, Mohamedou, and also Andy. And Andy is an independent journalist, also co-director of the co-founder of Close Guantanamo. And I never quite know how to say it, but I do think of you, and I think Andy is thought of as the world expert on what's happening in Guantanamo. And I say that because that's what Nancy Hollander sort of says, I think, who's one of the Nancy Hollander who was in the film. She's been panels before, and she said that she's always really pleased when Andy's around because she can depend on his research for keeping everybody who works on Guantanamo up to date with what's happening. And Courtney, of course, organised a very successful evening last year. And Courtney, I think we're going to try and repeat that. I've just been talking to Mohamedou to invite Mohamedou and do that again this year. So that's something that we'd like very much to do, to invite Mohamedou over again to do that, and Andy, of course. So I think I'm just going to kind of go stand back a bit and just I mean, I don't know whether Andy and Mohamedou, you want to just introduce yourselves a little bit first and then have questions, or just go straight into questions. Do you want to say something, Mohamedou? Maybe start just by saying a little bit about whatever you like, and is that okay? And then maybe Andy say something about where we're at, and then we can have questions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, hi, my name is Mohamedou Ould Salahi. For those who don't know me, I come from Mauritania. I grew up as a Bedouin, and I went to school by accident. I remember going to school without shoes. I remember vividly this day when it was very hot outside and I had no shoes. And then I had to go to the school anyway because I fell in love with school. And I used to run and then stop, at like structure and trees, and to cool down my feet. And this worked very well if it wasn't for this nosy neighbor of ours who stopped me, and he started grilling me. I mean, literally grilling me because my feet were glued on the sand. And he said, "Why didn't you take your shoes?" And I was ashamed to tell her that I didn't have shoes. And if someone like compliment you with something that it's not you, but you cannot tell them this is not you because it's a compliment, and then you have to live with this lie during that session. And so I couldn't tell her anything, and then she kept just telling me it's bad, I'm a bad kid because I wouldn't put on my shoes. And I was looking at her, but I wasn't thinking of what she was saying. Like when the lecture at school is not really interesting. And then I don't want Sarah to hear that. This is to the students. When the lecture is really boring, and then you look straight, but you don't hear anything. That was me when she was lecturing me. And so I said, okay, I go back and get my shoes. And she said, yes, good for you, go back. And I went back and took another round. At school, so my family, I was the first kid. Me and my older brother, the first kids to be sent ever from my family to school. And my family never asked me about tests because in Bedouin educational system, we don't have tests. You just learn. And you learn at your pace. And I love this system. And if I was in any decision-making process, I would do away with all tests. There is no test at all, And I want people to learn because they really want to learn the subject matter, and they can take as much time as they wish with the subject matter, And because this French Napoleonian militaristic school system that is adopted by very much the whole world is just stupid, because I'm not Andy and Andy is not me. Andy may be very good at these things and he want to learn them, and not me. And just put all of us in the same pre-packaged stuff. And then my family never asked me whether I passed or not. But I tell you something, I was always number one, but I never told my family it was a secret. Until I got my scholarship to Germany, they chose me, pick me up. And I remember my first night in Germany was in Sheraton Hotel. And it was the first time ever that I slept alone. I was never alone. Always my family was watching me, you know, and I woke up and a friend of mine whose family used to go to France on vacation, he came to me, he said, Mohammed, we can eat for free. I said, seriously? He said, yes. And then we went down to the buffet and I've seen so much food I never seen in my entire life. They have everything, cheese. By the way, cheese really is horrible for someone who never tried cheese. And eggs, cheese, bacon, everything. And I was like Alice in Wonderland, or like the German would say, die Qual der Wahl, the torture of too many choices. And I didn't know what to eat. But I know it's safe to take bread and butter and egg. An egg. I took an egg, sat down. Now my whole purpose, not anymore to eat, but to prove to everyone around me that I am a civilized person, which was actually a very hard sell, to be honest, because the way I dressed and the way I looked was really all like bad signals. I sat there and I broke the egg, but the egg was not cooked. And then I was like, oh shit, what should I do now? You know? And I was stuck with the egg. And then I slowly removed myself and retreated. Went back, stole the towels and put them in my bag and stole the small like soap stuff. And we left. This is Frankfurt, to the city where I started my study. On the way on the plane was shaking so hard, I thought it's going to blow up. And I was thinking, this is because of my sin, because I stole the towel from the hotel. And I was so like scared, you know. When it came down, I think I forgot that I committed a sin. And then I think I was strengthened my sin, but I never had like the audacity to steal any towels after that. So I was kidnapped after 9/11 and I spent 15 years in prison and almost 5 years in house arrest, 20 years. I was never charged, let alone convicted of any crime. So don't get like scared when I visit you, even though this is a little bit has its bad side, because I heard that bad guys are very popular in the UK. Yeah, I know. I want to be a little bit intimidating, you know, just enough, you know, to be interesting, you know, because this is like the British man, you know, the British man, you know. Anyway, this is me, and I'm so happy to be here. And you can shoot me with any question if you want. And I just want to say that I know Andy. I did not know Sarah in prison, but I know Andy because Andy was so like active everywhere. And in Guantanamo Bay, I saw him, you know. And thank you so much. Like every word you say comes like, you know, like a blessing to my heart when I was in Guantanamo Bay. And I presume that this is the case for everybody in Guantanamo Bay now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohamedou. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit, and then we can have questions from the students? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you so much, Mohamedou. For so many years, I was writing and not even knowing that you were able, I think primarily through your lawyers, to find out that I'd been working. And I think at some point they allowed people to watch TV, and I think oddly they were showing RT, and RT was actually one of the only channels. It was actually pretty much the only US-based broadcast channel that that dealt with Guantanamo. So that was amazing to hear. But yeah, I've been involved with Guantanamo for 17 years. I researched the stories of the men held at Guantanamo through publicly released documents after the Pentagon lost a Freedom of Information lawsuit in 2006. And that was the basis for my book, The Guantanamo Files, which was published in 2007. And since then, I've carried on writing about Guantanamo and campaigning to get the prison closed. And, you know, we're sadly, those of us who care about Guantanamo are still having to do this 21 years after the prison opened. So just before we go to a Q&A, I'll just explain a bit about the situation on the 21st anniversary of the opening of Guantanamo, which was on Wednesday last week. There are 35 men still held at Guantanamo. That's, I suppose, the good news when you consider that throughout its history, 779 men have been held there by the US military. So less than 5% of the total still held. The problem, of course, is that no one should be held at a place like Guantanamo because it was established to be beyond the reach of the law, and it remains a place that is fundamentally lawless. Of the 35 men still held, for example, 20 of them have been approved for release. So having held them all this time without charge or trial, the United States eventually got round to establishing review processes to look at whether they wanted to carry on holding these men or not, and have decided that 20 of the 35 men, in their cases, they don't want to hold them anymore. The majority of these decisions have taken place since President Biden took office. Now, this all sounds great, doesn't it? You know, after all this time, a review process is convened. It decides that you as a prisoner in Guantanamo don't constitute such a threat to the United States anymore that they must carry on holding you, that you can be freed. So why are these men still there? Well, the men are still there because there is no legal weight to these decisions. They are purely administrative. And that means that there's no mechanism whatsoever to pressurize the United States government to follow through on its decisions. And given the state of politics in the US, as we saw with President Obama, the last Democrat to preside over Guantanamo, what we're seeing with Joe Biden is the same thing, that it's easier to do nothing and sit on your hands than it is to do what it is that you're supposed to do, which is that if you approve people for a release, you should actually free them. And the reason this is such a problem is because it's part of the very nature of Guantanamo. Guantanamo was set up to be a prison where the law didn't apply. The United States government established it on its US naval base in Cuba to be beyond the reach of the US courts and to hold the men who were held there, the men and boys. There were children held at Guantanamo at the beginning. To hold these people without any fundamental rights whatsoever as human beings. Just to dwell on that for a moment, if you will. You know, we are all supposed to have the right not to be arbitrarily detained. In Britain, it's very important because it was part of Magna Carta over 800 years ago that first established the right of individuals not to be arbitrarily detained at the whim of the executive. It took a long time for that law to apply to everybody. You know, it started off with just the nobility, but it became something that applied to everybody, the great writ of habeas corpus, and it doesn't exist at Guantanamo. So, you know, I unfortunately, you know, would have to say to you on this anniversary that anyone who is interested in closing Guantanamo will need to start making a lot of noise about the Biden administration's failure to release these men, because I think it's absolutely shameful that they're holding people approved for release and that they haven't freed them. There are other men held at Guantanamo, and maybe we could get into that in the question and answer session if people want to know more about that. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Andy. So if anybody, I mean, I know that most of you have seen the film, I think, not all of you, but you can see it another time. But who would like to start with a question? Have you got a question that you'd like to ask anyone here? Yeah, do you want to go forward? And
so of course I watched the film about your story and everything. It stopped kind of between when you were cleared of all charges and then when you were released 7 years later. Is there anything you could maybe tell us about how it was different for you during those 7 years, or whether it was the same being detained during those 7 years after your name was cleared? Did you notice any difference in treatment or anything?
What's your name again?
I'm Gabby.
Gabby, okay. Gabby, thank you so much for your question. So there were like two wins at the same time. So I won the writ of habeas corpus, and the judge ordered the government to release me. Okay, and the second thing he ordered the government not to interrogate me any longer. This is the first time that the government cannot interrogate me anymore, and this second part was more important to me than the first part. You know, just being dragged to that interrogation every day. Everything that pops in the whole world, they drag me and ask me about it. I ask me about, for instance, like what happened in Mauritania, but I have no access to the news. No access. Access to the news would come after the court, but news that is selected by US government. So, and I was naive, you know, like we are talking to experts like Sarah. I thought that if a judge releases you, you go home. Yeah, you don't need, and I was preparing, and they told me, wait, if the judge said that you go home, it doesn't mean you go home, because there is another law. The US government can actually put you in prison with no charges, with nothing. And now they start blackmailing me and telling me, you need to defeat the court order. I was like, how? They said, you don't have to abide by it. You can just tell that you don't accept it, and we come back to interrogate. We bring you tea, we bring you movies, everything. And this is the darkest joke I ever heard in my life, and I heard many dark jokes in my life. And so they came to me, and then they told me to get up, and I was allowed to take the Quran with me, and then nothing else. But I choose not to take anything. I don't know. I don't know whether I took the Quran or not, but I just choose to go. And then they put me in a place, and then the FBI kept coming to me, and then asked me to say that I don't abide. And I told them, I don't want any trouble. I was like playing dumb. I don't want any trouble with the court. They told me, this is your right. And now, for the first time ever in my life, I have rights. I have the right to screw myself. I didn't know that. So, and you know, that was like very hard and for me in the beginning, but I knew I was doing the right thing, you know, and I was happy in my inside, very happy in my inside, because I just saw that the world is as I imagined it would be. Because at some point I thought maybe I did something that I wasn't aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, I mean, so Mohamedou was his release was ordered by a judge during a 2-year period at Guantanamo when habeas corpus actually applied. So the prisoners won a significant Supreme Court case in June 2008, and over the next 2 years, roughly 36 men had their release ordered by judges. The judges looked at the supposed evidence from the US government and said, this is rubbish. You haven't established that these people are involved with Al-Qaeda or the Taliban in any way. The ruling in Mohamedou's case, I thought the judge was great. But what happened then was that the government appealed. And this 2-year period when habeas corpus existed came to an end when right-wing judges in the appeals court changed the rules about, they basically ended up saying, in these cases, everything that the government says, however ridiculous, has to be treated as presumptively accurate. And the habeas victory stopped at that point. But what happened to Mohamedou was that the appeals court sent his ruling back to the lower court to look at again, and then it never got looked at again. So that went on for years. He had won a habeas corpus victory. That was vacated. The ruling was sent back to the lower court to look at again. Nothing happened. And he had to wait for years until the periodic review board process, which was the parole type system that President Obama established, came around to looking at his case and recommended him for release. And then yet again, Mohamedou, you had to wait after your periodic review board victory, didn't you? Because, I was involved in a parliamentary meeting that was organized by Tom Brake MP with Bernie and Susie that you met on your visit, and your brother came over from Germany. There were actors involved. Pressure had to be exerted so much to get you out of Guantanamo. And by this point, of course, Mohamedou wasn't one of those people in Guantanamo about whom we know nothing. And the intention of the US government was that we would know nothing about the men held at Guantanamo. The thing is that by this point, Mohamedou was a famous author. Your book had come out, Mohamedou, and yet there you were still stuck in Guantanamo. So I think legally, and in terms of how the law doesn't work at Guantanamo, Mohamedou's case is a fascinating example of just how broken the system is.
Yeah, I remember because I was actually at that meeting with Tom Brake and the actors. I can't remember who the actors and your brother, and I remember meeting everyone there. And I remember because Ray Silk from the Guantanamo Justice Campaign had asked me to speak on behalf of Amnesty International opposite Downing Street that year. And I read from your book, you were still detained, Mohamedou, and there's a video I've got of us at that demonstration. And I read from your book, and I was kind of like crying as I was reading it. And you were detained at that time, and I think there was such a determination from all of us that you shouldn't be there any longer. So yeah, but I do remember that meeting, and I wish I could remember who the actors were. Do you remember, Andy?
One of them was Toby Jones.
Yeah, Toby Jones. One of them was Toby Jones. Yeah.
Stephen Fry also read.
Yeah. So, but I remember that very, very clearly. So, yeah. Okay, great. So next, anyone? I've got questions, but I'd rather you ask questions. Anyone else got questions from seeing the film? Have you got anything you'd like to ask? Yeah.
I'm Isabel.
Can you hear Isabel? Right?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was wondering, after watching the film, so how did you maintain hope, and what gave you the strength to endure all of this?
So I didn't catch your name.
Name. What's your name?
Isabel.
I hear a hint of an accent. Am I right?
I'm from Switzerland.
Bist du Deutsch? Oder?
Ja, ich spreche Deutsch.
Okay, okay. Deswegen, als ich sagte, die Qual der Wahl, hast du das auch verstanden?
Ja, genau.
You know, Isabella, I really, to be honest, you know, I don't have like definitive answer. You know, my brother Andy studied the detainees. I always when I have question about Guantanamo Bay, I go back to him, you know, because he read like medical file, etc., etc., and I want him to comment on what I'm going to say, you know. But I can tell you something, that forgiveness helped me a lot. You know, like when I was in my cell, when it mattered, you know, I went and I did my prayer and my meditation, and I said, I decide to forgive everyone. I'm not looking, you know, to have any revenge. And, you know, this pain and this poison start to go away, you know, from my body. And I felt like a relief and happiness, you know. And this is like different, but I just like, Isabella, just imagine breakups. I give this example because everybody went through breakups. Breakups are very painful because you trusted someone and you think that they really betrayed you. You know, that's, you know, what it comes down to. And then you really want them to suffer a little bit, but even if you are not really vindictive, you just want them to suffer a little bit so they could appreciate you, you know, just, you know, a little bit controlling them. So I just wish they a little bit have some pain and they can think about me and said, she was really a good person. So I really think that all those fantasies of like, you know, like bad people always get karma, I really don't believe that. I really believe that throughout history, those bad people are really doing well. You know, look at the Arab like dictators. You know, they're really doing well. They have a very long life. They have a lot of, you know, money. Their families are doing well. They have houses in London, very expensive houses in London, etc., etc. But I do believe that there is something that no one can take away from people like us. You know, the peace of heart. And that you can only have if you truly start to forgive and not to hold any grudges. And I love this saying, like resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that your enemy dies. And the second thing that helped me, I drowned myself in learning and studying. Like I didn't have books, you know, at least in the beginning, and I taught myself English by just remembering what people say. And then like when I get a chance to write, and I write and I just read it over and over, you know. You know, like Andy would tell you that it was forbidden for detainees to learn the English language, actually, and they pull out all the like books who could help me. But it was too late because I already picked up so much. And also learning about American people. And American people are good people, by and large, you know. And yeah, I think those two things, like forgiveness and studying, and always going back to the basic, what we learned from our grandmothers. That's what matters, you know. And
Mohamedou, I'd just like to say you're really ruining the whole interesting bad guy thing here. You've got to work on that. But keep going.
I know, you know, I know I lost.
Forgiveness doesn't go with the bad guy image. That's right. That's right.
Okay, did you want to come back on that, Andy? I know you mentioned it. Mohamedou at one point said something about you coming back on something you'd said, but I can't quite remember what that was now.
Well, I've heard Mohamedou speak before, so I've had the opportunity to be really confronted by the meaning of someone who was treated so appallingly, and who was held so alone, finding within themselves that you know, when you've got no other route out, that you accept that the only way forward is that you're going to forgive the people who have done these things to you. That is, you know, it's so astonishingly powerful. It really is. And I think because Mohamedou was treated so badly and isolated for so long, he didn't have the camaraderie, if you like, that a lot of the general population of Guantanamo had, where, you know, even the guys who spent a lot of time fighting against the system, which, you know, particularly some of the younger guys did, and were regularly treated, you know, appallingly and held in isolation, you know, they were still able to communicate with each other, and I think it was that camaraderie that helped them in some ways, which, you know, was not available to Mohamedou. So, but, you know, I think for everyone in Guantanamo to have been treated so appallingly by the United States government, and I mean, this is, you know, absolutely without question, that, you know, the law was shredded the moment that the men were apprehended and taken to Guantanamo. That the normal rules didn't apply, and that the place was brutal. I mean, in the early years, there was widespread torture and abuse applied to a huge number of prisoners. But the entire place is a kind of torture system, really. You know, I've always thought it's significant that when the Red Cross visited, and, you know, they don't normally comment publicly about facilities that they visit, but in the early days they said, we're very worried about the impact on the mental health of the people held at Guantanamo because of the open-ended nature of their imprisonment. In other words, you know, when you don't have a sentence, when you don't have an end date, when every day you wake up wondering if you're ever going to be released, that itself is a form of mental torture. You know, and I think that that's still an appropriate consideration when thinking about Guantanamo. But, you know, this statement was made by a representative of the Red Cross in October 2003, nearly 20 years ago. So imagine that situation, really, that of the men that are still waking up in Guantanamo every day, wondering if they will ever be freed.
You know, it's just so beautifully said what Andy said, and I just wanted to imagine, like, you know, everybody was scared at one point or another. Just imagine, you know, and said, oh my God, thank God. And like, usually the fear lasts, I don't know, maybe a couple of minutes, maybe 1 hour if you are worried about someone. Just imagine that feeling for so many years. You know, I remember, like, whenever I hear the sound of the chains, because when you hear the chains, you know, they will take you away, you know. And then my heart like goes in sync with the chain, with the sound of the chains. When they drag them, they like about 20 kilograms. I don't know how much that in the UK, maybe 1 stone, I don't know, or 2 stone, I don't know how many stones, but very heavy, you know. And you know, and I always, the question that comes to when these nightmares going to end, always like, there is no end to it. Absolutely, there is no expiration date, you know, to that pain. And actually, when I say this, I know there are people who are very sick and they enjoy hearing this because they said, this is what people deserve, like you know. But I have to say it, I have to share it, you know. And I know it's shared by a lot of detainees who were with me.
I think one of the things that I remember that struck me when I first, because I've, like Andy, I've sort of, you know, been involved with the campaign for many years, some of the initial photographs of when people were being transferred from say Afghanistan to Guantanamo, and just the brutality in which they were actually transferred. You know, it was in sort of open spaced aircraft carriers, you know, shackled in very, very sort of torturous positions. You know, that's not a way that you transfer a human being. You know, at the end of the day, even if someone faces a charge with a criminal offence, you put them in an aeroplane with a seatbelt on. You know, you don't sort of put them, you know, chained up and shackled. You know, I mean, I mean, I don't know whether that was what your transfer experience was like, Mohamedou, but you know, and I've noticed actually that those photographs seem to have disappeared from the internet. I don't know, but I can't see them anymore. Just like some of the poll tax riots seem to have disappeared from the internet. You know, things seem to disappear, but you don't see that, you know, somehow or other. But you know, there was kind of like almost no hiding the brutality, and it was like, as you say, it was like, you know, America wanted someone to blame, and you know, they were going to be quite open about the brutality. I think, you know, it seemed to me. Anybody else who wants to ask a question at this point? You've got one. Okay, we've got Melissa coming over into view.
Hi again. Mohamedou, thank you so much for everything so far. I was just wondering, have you considered suing anyone? As simple as this question might seem, because I did read that you considered suing Canada for something not necessarily related to Guantanamo, and the fact that the district court never heard the second habeas corpus hearing. I was just wondering if there was anything that could be done in terms of damages or something. Yeah.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. So the name again? Sorry again to ask.
Melissa.
Melissa. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're already very well informed. So, I cannot sue the greatest country in the world. That would be a very big shame. Because the greatest country in the world, they don't make mistake. And
yes, the same view I do. It's my question.
And I know, Andy, he has a rundown of everything, every attempt, to get some kind of accountability, and most of them ended in failure. I can only think of one case against the CIA contractor, the psychologist who devised the torture plan, some kind of accountability with 1 or 2 detainees. So my problem is that I have nothing to do with the US. I never been to the US. I never asked for a visa to the US. No contact whatsoever to the US. So, and all the information, all the quote unquote damning information that the US think that involves me came from Canada. And I was very frustrated because I wasn't allowed to travel. And the US said clearly that Canada is a red line. I cannot go back to Canada because they promised Canada back then. I understand that I would never see the light of the day. They can tell them whatever they need to tell them because I won't have any chance to challenge Canada. But now I have a chance. So what I did, I really wanted to have a passport because I have this landed immigrant status, which gives me almost like a Canadian citizen. And then because I just wanted to be free, I asked my Canadian lawyer to get me back my papers so I could travel to Canada and start working, because Mauritania would give me my passport. And then Canada wouldn't even respond. They completely ignore us. And then my lawyer said, the only way to have them respond is to sue them. And then I was very reluctant because I really don't want to sue anyone, to be honest. But they said this is the only way. And I really wanted to be removed from any list, because I went to some bank, they said you are on some kind of list. And then I just want to be cleared, my name, to clear my name. Thus, we did this suit against Canada. And by the way, Andy, they responded, and I was so happy. They didn't say money or anything, but they just now they said, we're gonna give you some document, because they refused to give us anything before. And as to against the US or Mauritania, I think the US needs the money more than me. And so does Mauritania.
Thank you.
What do you think, Andy, about the accountability?
Yeah, well,
versus
absolutely.
forgiveness?
I was going to talk about that. But so, are you not pursuing the Canadian government in court any longer then, Mohamedou? You've just you've accepted that they will not make life difficult for you, yeah?
No, this is not in my hand. This is like in the hands of the lawyer. And all I'm saying is that this is like now they are responsive. This is the first time that they respond.
Right, okay.
And
well,
this
I mean,
is, for me, is almost enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting as well, though, Mohamedou, because the only country that has accepted responsibility through the courts for the rendition and torture and abuse of Canadian citizens is Canada.
Yes.
So 3 men that were subjected to the extraordinary rendition program were sent to Syria, where they were tortured, and Omar Khadr as well finally succeeded in getting the Canadian government to accept responsibility for what they'd done to him. The question of United States accountability, and I think that as you're there with Sarah in Brighton University, you're studying the law. So you will know that the United States that there is no way to hold the United States accountable for what it does. It has refused to join the International Criminal Court process. And you know, what is anyone supposed to do when every effort in the United States courts to hold the government accountable for rendition, for torture, for other forms of abuse connected with the war on terror has been foiled because the United States invokes the state secrets doctrine, which is something that dates back to the years after the Second World War. What it's meant to do is stop important classified information that is necessary for national security from being invoked in a court. But the United States has been involved in crimes in the war on terror. So what they're actually using the state secrets doctrine for is to protect themselves from the mildest version would be embarrassment, and the more damaging version would be the exposure of crimes. I think it's pretty clear that the United States was involved in horrendous crimes in the war on terror, and that we can't simply back down just because they've tried to make sure that they're unimpeachable. So what I'm in the early stages of establishing is the Guantanamo Accountability Project, where I'll be working to find ways that over the long term, because I think this could take a very long time, but over the long term, what we call for is for the United States to properly investigate what it has done at Guantanamo over 21 years. And, you know, that we do have a model, which is the US, the Senate Intelligence Committee's report into the CIA's torture program, and which is an extraordinary study that was undertaken. I also think that we need to call on the United States to acknowledge its chronic failures of intelligence, which is what it has used to attempt to justify the imprisonment of the men and boys rounded up largely indiscriminately and sent to Guantanamo. I also think that the core of the United States problem, as it affects men freed from Guantanamo, is that they are actually not free. When they were sent to Guantanamo, as I mentioned earlier, they were designated as human beings without any fundamental rights whatsoever. And it turns out that, you know, this is still the case. The men who are held at Guantanamo, approved for release, still have no rights. Like I said, there is no court they can appeal to actually get themselves released. When people are freed from Guantanamo, if they're lucky, their home government accepts that there was no case against them and leaves them unmolested. But that isn't necessarily the case. And in the cases of men who have been sent from Guantanamo to other countries because they couldn't safely be sent home, those arrangements are made in secret between the United States and those governments. We don't know what those decisions involved. what we can tell from the aftermath is that a lot of people have ended up being dumped in countries that either don't care about their welfare or actively regard them still as dangerous, because everyone released from Guantanamo carries this taint with them of having been an enemy combatant. Even though they were never convicted of a crime, the very nature of having been an enemy combatant at Guantanamo is somehow apparently even worse. And so I think it's really at the heart of American accountability is to get them eventually to recognize that how fundamentally wrong what they did was. And then that means to get to a position to restore the human rights, the fundamental rights of people held at Guantanamo, which can only come about through the United States eventually acknowledging that it made mistakes. And, you know, whether it will ever happen, I don't know, but that these kinds of generational injustices can take decades to resolve. You know, if we look at the Japanese-American internment during the Second World War, it took a very long time for the United States to acknowledge that what it did was wrong. So this is the intention of the Guantanamo Accountability Project, and there would be a final point, and the final point would be about reparations. But as we all know, I'm sure, people studying the law will recognize, from the very beginning, lawyers have been involved in every aspect of the running of Guantanamo, exactly with the intention of trying to make sure that at no point is anybody going to be able to hold the government responsible. And I'll just give you one little anecdote that establishes the truth of this. In 2004, the men held at Guantanamo finally won a significant Supreme Court case. It was the first of 3 significant Supreme Court cases. They won the right to habeas corpus. And it turns out that the Bush administration then tried to reverse that and got Congress to try and prevent habeas from applying at Guantanamo. And it took another 4 years before another Supreme Court ruling led to that 2-year period I was telling you about, where habeas actually applied at Guantanamo. So in response to the Supreme Court ruling in June 2004, the Bush administration set up what they call combatant status review tribunals at Guantanamo, where they would bring the prisoners into a room with three military officers who would run through a load of alleged evidence, for the prisoners to respond to. The prisoners in most cases had no idea what they were talking about, had no idea where this information had come from. And at the end of the process, they were rubber stamped as enemy combatants who could continue to be held indefinitely without charge or trial. Now, in a handful of cases, at the very beginning of this process, in the summer of 2004, they decided that some prisoners had been incorrectly imprisoned, and they called them for a very short period not enemy combatants. It lasted, I think, for about a fortnight, and you could tell after that the alarm bells had gone off for the lawyers. If they say not enemy combatant, that means that they could be held responsible for what they did. They changed it to no longer enemy combatant. And there you go. That's just one little example of how the lawyers control everything. So, you know, it's going to be a long road to establish that the United States made the profound mistakes that it did, because the very essence of Guantanamo was they got away with any objective, verifiable analysis of the difference between right and wrong, of crimes and innocence. They completely muddied the waters so abysmally, because that's what happens when you shred the law. You know, we know that if someone goes on trial, there are miscarriages of justice. Of course there are. But the notion is that there will be...
Sorry for interjecting.
No, please go ahead, Mohamedou.
No, I'm just like asking myself all the time, how long, like in a free country like the UK and in Europe, are we going to tiptoe around the fact that the lawyers of the US government are corrupt? Because they did come to the president and they told him, tell us what you want to do, and will make it legal. So this is not their job. Their job in a democracy is to stand back and say, okay, this is, you know,
Exactly.
this is lawful or not. No, they went to him and they said, just tell us what you want to do to those guys, and we make it rubber stamping as legal, you know.
America.
Well, it's like you say, it's a complete antithesis to the separation of powers, which is you know, which the US Constitution is supposed to be based on, and the rule of law. And I think what Andy is saying there, and I know he's mentioned before about the accountability projects, I absolutely support that. You know, I just think it's absolutely, you know, of course America wants us to disappear, you know, somehow, but we need to keep going on it. Absolutely, and I think also we need to keep going to try and get the British government accountable as well for their role in extrajudicial extradition, the extra, what are they called? Not tradition, you know, the extraordinary renditions of people that went through our airspace and went through our airports on the way to black sites to where we knowingly knew that they were going to be tortured. So I think we need to keep going with that. We've got about 10 minutes left. You want to ask a question? I've got to ask a question too, but you ask first, Towo. You ask, please do.
Okay, I will not be able to ask my question in full because we have only 10 minutes left, but I will try my best to summarize it. Okay, to begin with, my name is Towo. Yes, I'm Nigerian. And I have two things to say. The first thing is, Mohamedou, I know you said that what has gotten you through all of this has been forgiveness. And while I respect that, and I believe that's okay, I have enough room in my heart for your resentment. I will carry that anger and resentment on your behalf. The second thing I have to say is that saying that I'm Nigerian is important because in all of this conversation about holding the government accountable and how the prisons are not working correctly, is to say that as a Nigerian and as a Black woman, for Black people and for Nigerians, like a lot of us know that democracy has never really been a reality, has always been a myth. And in the case of US not, finally saying, okay, now we're ready to admit that we're wrong. The US, both the US and the UK, significantly are colonial inventions and, prison industrial complex. Prisons are never going to work the way they were meant to work. So my question, I guess I'm trying to say, is that knowing that these systems are fundamentally wrong, and also to add, I did a research project with a professor in my school over the summer, where during my research I came across a really amazing article which said that, okay, just like you said that the lawyers in the US are really, really terrible. What I came across in my article was that this is not by mistake. This is a core function. Lawyers act as agents of the states, whether, like lawyers actually doing the right thing in terms of democracy, not being in it, is actually like radical. It's not how it's supposed to go. So lawyers actually helping and upholding the US's violence is how it's supposed to go, because the state is a colonial invention, which is what I was trying to say about me being Nigerian. Democracy has never been a reality. So my question is, I'm so sorry, I went off on a tangent. My question is, I love the work you're doing. However, how, or have you considered maybe being involved with something more radical, such as prison abolition? Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to say, thank you very much, Towe. We've got another class coming into this room in 5 minutes, so we are going to have to end, unfortunately, at 4 o'clock. So just to let you know before you start replying, Mohamedou.
You're on mute.
First, thank you so much. What's your name again?
Tawa.
Hawa?
Tawa. It's T-O-W-O.
Suwa, and what's your background, if I may?
I'm Nigerian.
Nigerian. So I want to be British. When they ask you, where are you from? You say, I'm from London. No, we really want to know where you're from. So, and so unless you're white. Okay. I mean, and you always talk about this. We always talk about like accountability versus forgiveness. I'm a citizen. I'm not a government official. Okay. As a citizen, I have to contribute to peace and coexistence, you know, and that's why I want forgiveness. I go for forgiveness, and I go for reaching out to American people, to British people, to German people, and we want like to spread peace and you know, like cut short, you know, undercut the government efforts. You know, we have in this country where I am now, the Netherlands, we have a very known philosopher of the 15th century. His name is Erasmus. And Erasmus, one of his saying is, governments want war, but people want peace. And we don't need to wait on the government to make peace, make everything. Just like you do, you go to Downing Street and you make peace.
Thank you. Mike, we're going to have to go now. I just wanted to ask you something very quickly, Mohamedou. As you know, there's been demonstrations going on in the US, different parts of the US. There's been a demonstration in London. Do you think that those who are still in Guantanamo, do you think they find out that these demonstrations, that there are people that care on the streets? Do you think that gets back to them through their lawyers?
Yes, one way or the other. Even if one person demonstrates, this gives like energy, hope, you know, and it shows also there is someone who cares about me. Okay. You know, I mean, just imagine we use social media. I'm talking about the younger people right there, and they look at their social media. If they see good comment, they say, oh my God, this is good. If they see bad comment, they cannot sleep. You know, this is, you know, you need to know that people care about you.
Good. Okay. Because that's what I kind of try and say to the students, or when we're trying to engage people, that even if at the end of the day the government doesn't budge, at least those people who are detained will know that there are people here saying this is wrong. Mohamedou, we're friends on Facebook, so if you look on Facebook, you'll see that I've posted some pictures from the demonstration this Saturday. Andy, you can see those as well. Andy's got to come into the 21st century and get on WhatsApp, and then you would have seen the pictures that we posted on that. You're asking me, Andy, where are the photographs? And I remember now, they are on our Guantanamo Network WhatsApp chat.
Leave my friend alone. Sarah, leave my friend alone. He's a sovereign citizen of the UK. Okay?
I'm teasing him. But no, it's because I haven't had a chance to email things to him. But we're going to have to go. But I think, Mohamedou, we would love you to come back to Brighton University, and I'm sure that we can arrange that over the next couple of months and send you an invitation, and hopefully get you back over here and show the film to all of our law students, you know, who would like, you know, it is inspiring. And I'm going to start crying now, but it is inspiring. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to our master's students and other students here today. But we're going to have to leave it now. But this is being recorded, so people can look. So I'll let the students say goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Thank you,
Bye,
David,
Mohamedou.
for coming and recording it. See you later, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Thank you for
See
showing
ya.
us Anne Frank's house as well. That was really lovely.
Yeah, how exciting.
Thank you. Bye, Mohamedou. Okay, guys. See you later.
See ya.
See ya.